The soil of southern Louisiana does not merely hold the roots of ancient live oaks, it holds a memory. If you stand alone at the edge of a sugarcane field just as the sun dips below the horizon, you can feel the oppressive weight of the air pressing against your skin. It is a thick, humid stillness that seems to swallow sound, yet leaves an undeniable ringing in your ears. This is a landscape painted in the deep, bruised hues of twilight, where the Spanish moss hangs like tattered shrouds from the branches. You are not just standing on dirt, you are standing on a vast, unmarked graveyard. The deep earth remembered everything that happened here, long after the ledgers were closed and the grand houses began to rot. The grand, white-columned mansions that dot the Great River Road are often celebrated for their architectural beauty, but their foundations are mortared with unimaginable suffering. Behind the manicured gardens and the sweeping iron balconies lies a shadow that no amount of southern sunlight can burn away. These vast estates were engines of commerce fueled by human blood. The contrast between the opulent wealth of the main house and the brutal reality of the fields creates a psychic friction, a tear in the fabric of the place itself. It is reported that this friction is exactly what traps the past in a perpetual, agonizing present, rendering the air heavy with an unseen sorrow. To understand the enduring hauntings of these spaces, you must confront the historical reality of the Louisiana slave plantations. Unlike other regions, the cultivation of sugarcane was a uniquely lethal enterprise. The labor was grueling, relentless, and carried out under conditions that routinely proved fatal. Men, women, and children were worked to death in the suffocating heat of the bayou, their lives treated as expendable resources in the pursuit of immense wealth. The sheer volume of human agony that saturated these fields over generations did not simply vanish when emancipation was finally declared. It seeped into the earth, pooling in the lowest, darkest places. The cruelty of the overseer was a constant, terrifying reality. These men were given absolute authority to extract labor through any violent means necessary, and the historical records are replete with accounts of their depravity. Punishments were public, prolonged, and designed to break the human spirit. The crack of the whip and the screams of the tortured were the daily soundtrack of the plantation. It is believed that such concentrated, malicious violence leaves an indelible scar on the environment. The land itself becomes traumatized, forced to witness and absorb the atrocities committed upon it, day after agonizing day. Out of this crucible of suffering emerged the legends of the Planteur ghosts. In local lore, these are not the spirits of the enslaved, but rather the restless, cursed souls of the plantation owners and overseers themselves. It is reported that these entities are bound to the estates they once ruled with an iron fist, trapped in a purgatory of their own making. They are said to wander the wide galleries and the dark hallways of the big houses, condemned to eternally oversee a rotting empire. The planteur is often described as a shadow figure, distinguished by the heavy, authoritative thud of riding boots on wooden floorboards. Those who maintain the old properties today often speak of these chilling encounters. Caretakers working alone in the dead of night have reported the sudden, overwhelming stench of stale tobacco and sour sweat, followed by the distinct sound of a leather riding crop striking a wooden banister. One local account describes a night watchman who followed the sound of heavy, dragging footsteps up the grand staircase, only to find the upper landing completely empty, the air suddenly dropping to an unnatural, freezing temperature. The Planteur spirits do not seem to seek redemption. They merely repeat the motions of their tyrannical lives, entirely oblivious to the passage of time. But the big house is only a fraction of the story. The true heart of the haunting lies out in the fields and the dense woods that border the properties. Here, the phenomena shift from the residual echoes of the oppressors to the raw, unresolved pain of the oppressed. Visitors and historical researchers exploring the overgrown sites of former slave cabins often report a sudden, suffocating feeling of grief. It is an emotional weight so profound that it can drop a person to their knees, a sudden influx of despair that does not belong to them. The air grows impossibly still, and the surrounding woods seem to close in. Imagine walking through that dense, tangled brush as the light fails. The shadows stretch and distort, and every snap of a twig sounds like a fracturing bone. You might hear the faint, rhythmic sound of metal clinking against metal, a noise that historical accounts link to the iron shackles worn by those forced to toil in the fields. It is a sound that defies logic, echoing across empty acres of land, yet it is reported with alarming frequency. The isolation of the bayou amplifies the dread, leaving you with the distinct, unsettling certainty that you are surrounded by a multitude of unseen watchers. It is within this suffocating atmosphere of dread that the legend of Bloody Bones was born. In the folklore of the Deep South, Bloody Bones is a terrifying, boogeyman-like entity, often invoked to keep children from wandering into the dangerous swamps at night. But the roots of this legend are deeply entangled with the trauma of slavery. According to some Gullah and local traditions, Bloody Bones is said to be the mangled, vengeful spirit of an enslaved person who was brutally murdered by an overseer, their body left unburied in the woods to be devoured by wild animals. The entity is described as a skeletal figure, dripping with blood, hunting for the descendants of those who wronged him. The story of Bloody Bones served a dual purpose in the enslaved communities. On one level, it was a practical warning against the very real physical dangers of the swamp and the deadly consequences of attempting to escape. But on a deeper psychological level, it was a manifestation of their collective, unresolved pain and their desperate desire for cosmic justice. If the law of the living offered no protection and no retribution, then the folklore provided a supernatural avenger. The legend allowed the unspeakable horrors they endured to take a physical, terrifying shape that could strike back at the darkness. Even today, the presence of Bloody Bones is allegedly felt in the deepest, most untouched parts of the Louisiana wilderness. Hunters and locals navigating the dense thickets of kudzu and cypress knees have reported hearing a guttural, rattling sound like dry bones grinding together, echoing from the impenetrable shadows. There are accounts of a metallic scent of copper and old blood suddenly filling the humid air, accompanied by a primal, paralyzing fear that urges the witness to run and never look back. Whether Bloody Bones is a literal spirit or a thought form created by generations of terror, the dread it inspires is entirely real. This brings us to the unsettling concept of geographical trauma. Can the earth itself become a repository for human agony? The dark, slow-moving waters of the bayou and the dense, choking mud of the cane fields seem uniquely capable of holding on to the past. It is believed that the extreme emotional energy released during moments of profound suffering acts as a kind of psychic dye, staining the environment permanently. The Louisiana landscape, with its oppressive heat and frequent flooding, acts as a sponge for this dark energy, absorbing the blood and the tears and refusing to wash them away. The tragedy is compounded by the deliberate erasure of the victims. Across the state, countless unmarked cemeteries where enslaved people were buried have been lost to time, neglect, and deliberate destruction. In many cases, the land was simply plowed over to plant more sugar cane, the resting places of thousands desecrated in the name of continued profit. This profound disrespect for the dead is often cited by paranormal investigators as the primary catalyst for the enduring hauntings. When a soul is denied peace in life and dignity in death, it is said that their spirit becomes tethered to the earthly plane, restless and demanding to be acknowledged. The manifestations of this restlessness are often auditory, a chorus of disembodied sorrow that rises when the living world goes quiet. In the dead of night, residents living near the boundaries of old plantations have reported hearing the low, mournful singing of spirituals drifting across the empty fields. It is not the sound of a recording or a trick of the wind. It is described as a rich, multi-part harmony that vibrates in the chest, carrying a profound sense of mourning. The phantom voices swell and fade, a heartbreaking testament to the communities that were forged in the fires of unimaginable hardship. The physical environment often reacts to these spiritual echoes. If you walk the grounds of certain notorious estates, you might encounter sudden, inexplicable cold spots that defy the sweltering Louisiana heat. The temperature can plummet 20 degrees in a single step, the air turning icy and jagged in your lungs. These thermal anomalies are frequently reported near the sites of former whipping posts or the solitary confinement boxes used for punishment. It is as if the lingering trauma has literally frozen the air, creating a pocket of suspended time where the suffering is still actively occurring. To experience these phenomena is to understand that the past is not past. The history of the Deep South is not a closed book. It is a living, breathing entity that continues to walk among us. The hauntings of the slave plantations are not merely ghost stories designed to thrill tourists. They are an unsettling confrontation with a legacy of cruelty that has never truly been reconciled. The spirits that are believed to wander these lands are not seeking to frighten the living. They are demanding that we remember what was done to them. There is a heavy moral weight to these supernatural claims. When we listen to the accounts of the Planteur ghosts or the terrifying legends of bloody bones, we are listening to the echoes of a fractured society. The unresolved pain of the enslaved acts as an anchor, holding the spiritual atmosphere of the region in a state of perpetual mourning. It forces us to acknowledge that the beautiful, moss-draped landscapes of Louisiana are inextricably linked to a history of brutal exploitation. The ghosts serve as an uncomfortable, necessary reminder that justice delayed, even by centuries, leaves a permanent mark on the world. The whispers of the old plantations still carry on the breeze. As night falls over the bayou, the shadows lengthen and the boundary between the living and the dead grows thin. The land remembers the crack of the whip, the clink of the iron, and the silent tears shed in the dark. Until the deep wounds of history are somehow healed, the dark spirits of Louisiana will allegedly continue their restless vigil. The soil is too steeped in sorrow to ever truly sleep, and the voices from the past will endure, echoing through the cane fields, waiting for someone brave enough to finally listen.